we being tricked into becoming veggie or vegan? More and more schools, for example, are doing these like vegetarian or vegan only days. So when it comes lunchtime or snack time or whatever it is they have, there are no meat options. And also Quorn. So if you know Quorn, what Quorn is, it's that meat substitute. It looks like mince, but it's made of mushroom, I think, or fungus or something. Quorn's CEO, the boss of Quorn, has announced that pork sausages will be blended with Quorn, fake meat, in NHS hospitals by the end of the year. So if you have a sausage in a hospital, it'll have Quorn in it, and it'll have a lot less pork in it. And there's doing it in a bid to tackle climate change, apparently. So I don't know what I think about this. I mean, on the surface of it, I suppose it's not the end of the world, but what happened to choice? What if you want a fully meaty sausage? I mean, a sausage is probably a bad example because there's all sorts of stuff in a sausage anyway, isn't there? But I don't know. Should you have the option? And is this a sort of creep towards people being vegetarian? Are we being tricked into it? I don't know. Should we be worried about this? 0800 121 8181. Text 81333. Start with HW. I spoke to Vanessa Sturman a little bit earlier on. Vanessa is a plant-based health coach from Energize and Thrive Plant-Based. Here's what she said to me earlier on.
I'm not sure I actually think vegetarianism is being sneaked in. I think we do like to divide things into these categories of meat eating, vegetarianism, veganism, when actually what we really need to do for our health is everyone's about 1 in 10 is actually getting the amount of fiber they really, really need. So what we want is to be getting everyone eating more plants, regardless of whether they are vegan, vegetarian, meat eaters. This is something that's going to help the planet, gut health, lower the risk of diseases. So it's a really positive move.
But what about choice? I totally hear what you're saying, and as it goes personally, I think I agree with you. But if someone wants to eat a sausage that is meat, then they should eat a sausage that's meat, shouldn't they? Rather than having Quorn, which isn't meat, blended into it.
Choice is very important, but it's quite interesting because food service has done blended products before without telling people. It's actually a more common practice than we think, but it has got into the news. It is Quorn sausages, and Quorn is a quintessential vegetarian product.
Well, it's mushroom, basically, isn't it?
It's mushroom-based, yes, exactly. Yeah. But we know that these choices are potentially much better for heart health. We know that they can be better for preventing that disease, but people are still eating meat by having those blended sausages.
But what if I want to have surely you should have a choice. You should have 100% meat sausage and a sort of, whatever, 50-50 Quorn meat sausage. You should have that choice, surely, shouldn't you?
Well, I think this idea of choice is quite interesting because people are able to eat that meat. Like I said, there's lots of products where they're more blended than people think. And actually, people are complaining all the time, the NHS should make us more healthy. The NHS is taking steps to say, well, how can we reduce the risk of things like type 2 diabetes and heart disease and tackle climate change at the same time without people having to do so much themselves? So they're taking all these actions. And really, we should be very pleased that they're doing that. But that choice is still there. If there's a meat and blended Quorn sausage within the NHS, you're still eating a meat sausage. It's not taking away that choice and forcing you to be a vegetarian or a vegan.
And schools bringing in vegan and vegetarian only days, because that's quite a thing, isn't it? Young children need protein, don't they? They do need to eat meat. It's an important part of your diet, or can be an important part of your diet.
You're absolutely right in saying that children need protein. We all need protein. This is where there's a lot of misinformation. So there is protein in all plant foods, and there is this misconception that meat equals protein and there's protein nowhere else. There's so many sources of wonderful protein in plants. This can come from peas, beans, lentils. Those are our legumes. It comes from tofu, tempeh, and it's also in vegetables as well. So having a wonderful balanced meal that is vegan or vegetarian in those schools will still give those children the protein they need, but will actually give them the fiber that many of them are deficient in.
Does it give them as much protein, though? Because meat has a very high protein. It's basically all protein, isn't it?
Well, it's not all protein in the sense that in there you still have things like
Yeah, you got some fat in there, but it has a lot of protein compared to a vegetable which has some protein.
Well, it depends what you're comparing it to. If you're comparing it to broccoli, you're not going to eat a head of broccoli just to get your protein in. But there are many plant foods that are high enough in protein. But
if a child is having, if maybe that's their, say they get a free school dinner, if that is, say, maybe their only one substantial meal of the day, surely it should have as much stuff in it as it can possibly have.
I completely agree, but I think the hyper focus on protein is a real problem because that tends to be what we're not deficient in the developed world. But these children will be very deficient in other nutrients, especially fiber that they're not getting enough of. But if those meals are properly balanced and if they're done in a central location, that's something that will have been thought about. Those children should be getting enough protein from those meals. I understand it's a huge problem for certain children that they're not necessarily eating enough food in general, but it's very, very important those meals are truly balanced. That does not necessarily mean that meal needs to contain meat.
So that is Vanessa Sturman, who had a little chat with me earlier on about this. She's a plant-based health coach, and she's on Instagram if you want to see what she does. Energize and Thrive Plant-Based is her Insta.